Our group has chosen the issue related to the education system in Malaysia, focusing on the recent reform of the matriculation intake criteria in Malaysia. Our team consists of me, Dong Jiahui, and my group members Wang Yixing, Shi Enduo, and Wang Hongyuan. This presentation is divided into 6 parts: introduction and background, objectives, theory, discussion, and conclusion. Now I will explain the background. The education system in Malaysia has evolved significantly, reflecting the country's diverse culture and socio-economic needs. One of the key aspects of this system is the Siju Pelajaran Malaysia or SPM exam, which is crucial for Malaysian students. Recently, the Malaysian government announced a major reform in the matriculation intake criteria to promote educational equity and inclusivity. Starting from the 2025 intake, this reform guarantees that all top scholars in the SPM, regardless of their racial background, will secure places in matriculation programs. This aims to ensure that merit and performance are the primary criteria for advancing in the education system. Under the new policy, SPM graduates with 10 A's or more are guaranteed matriculation spots, while the existing Bumiputra quota system, which reserves 19% of these places for Bumiputra students, remains intact. This approach tries to balance inclusivity with historical policies supporting the Bumiputra community. The announcement has received mixed reactions, highlighting the challenges of balancing meritocracy and affirmative actions. This reform is expected to significantly impact students, educators, and Malaysian society, making a pivotal step in the evolution of the Malaysian education system. Our report aims to analyze the impact of this matriculation intake criteria reform on educational equity and the overall implications for the education system in Malaysia. We will use Pierre Bourdieu's theory of cultural capital as a theoretical framework to guide our analysis. Thank you, and I will hand over to the next part of our presentation.
Next turn is the objectives, the first point, and to analyze the impact of the matriculation intake to criteria reform of educational equity. The explanation is this objective aims to explain how the recent reform in the SPM explanation systems, particularly the granted matriculations brought to top source irrespective of racial background, affect educational equity in Malaysia by focusing on the changes in the access to higher education and the balance between the matriculatory and affirmative action. To analyze will provide insight into whether the reform is successful in promoting inclusivity and fairness within the educational systems. Next point is to study the impact of the cultural capital in the Malaysian educational systems, to evaluating the overall influence of the reform on the Malaysian educational system by utilizing produce national of the cultural capital. Students will develop the ability to examine cultural capital's impact on the educational achievement and social advancements. With more accuracy and critical thinking, the study will also advantage the evaluation of the cultural capital among the world's social economic groups and assess the potential impact of the new places on these educations, as well as the influence on educational achievements and long-term social mobility. And then those evaluating the impact of family background, educational achievements, and the social connection on the acquisition and the transmission of the critical knowledge. This study aims to determine if children from homes with the limited cultural resources have the equal access to higher educational chance. Next is welcome to Enzo to introduce the theory.
Okay, for this part, I'm going to explain the theory. The theory of cultural capital is an important form of capital basis, social capital and economic capital. Theories include all of a person's cultural quality, skills, and educational background. Perry Bodiams mentioned that the educational system mainly provides language and cultural competence, while the cultural familiarity is mainly given by the family. Their resources can influence social mobility and success. Educational achievement is the highest level of education a person has completed. Because cultural capital is unevenly distributed across different socioeconomic groups, children from wealthy families generally have more cultural capital, which can be lead to educational inequality. At the same time, highly educated parents are more likely to attach importance to their children's education, thus strengthens their cultural capital. Based on the theory of cultural capital, there are the following points of knowledge, skills, and education. In the distribution of resources, cultural resources aim to equal distribution but actually play a role in social inequality. The form of cultural capital is basically embodied state, objective state, and institutionalized state. There will be different ways to acquire the transfer cultural capital. Based on the different family background of each person, there will be many different ways to acquire the cultural resources from birth. Secondly, there are differences in the education system of the different regions. Finally, there is the approach to social networking. The way of cultural capital acquisition is also one of the main factors affecting equity. Bodiam mentioned that cultural capital is an important mechanism for the reproduction of the social inequality. Therefore, I believe that the maintenance and the continuation of cultural resources, such internal transformation between generation, socialized class, and higher social mobility. So, the most important thing is the balance of culture and education. But the fact is, the student with higher cultural capital will perform better. Therefore, the theory of cultural capital may overemphasize cultural factors while ignoring economic and political factors. While explaining the unequal distribution of the social resources, because the theory is based on the experience of the Western societies, it may be applicable in Malaysia, but it does not mean that it is applicable in all cultural backgrounds. So let's move on next part.
Okay, this part is discussion. Firstly, the reform introduced a more comprehensive assessment system that goes beyond traditional exams. In addition to written tests, it incorporates project assessments, laboratory work, and oral examinations. This multifaceted approach aims to evaluate not only academic knowledge but also practical application. teamwork abilities, and problem-solving skills. By doing so, it provides a more holistic view of students' capabilities, fostering the development of versatile talents necessary for the modern workforce. Secondly, the reform placed a strong emphasis on ensuring fairness and equal opportunities in education. Recognizing the disparities between urban and rural areas, the government has allocated increased resources and support to underprivileged regions. This proactive message ensuring that students in rural and remote areas receive the same educational opportunities as their urban counterparts. By narrowing the educational gap between different regions, the reform strives to create a more equitable society where all individuals have access to equality higher education regardless of their background or geography location. In conclusion, Malaysia's educational reform is a significant step towards a more inclusive and comprehensive educational system, preparing our students to meet the challenges of the modern world. Let's move to the last part, conclusion.
The reform of the matriculation intake criteria is a big step towards educational equity in Malaysia by guaranteeing spots for top scholars regardless of their racial background. The government is pushing for a more inclusive and fair education systems. However, the success of their reform depends on how well it's implemented and continuously evaluated by authorities to tackle any challenge that come up. That's all of our group presentation. Thank you.